In the last class, we've all reviewed the traits of the personality types of the 9-point personality system, and your homework for the weekend was great. Everyone took at least a first pass guess of their personality type, and I really enjoyed your comments on that. Now what we're going to discuss is the biological basis of personality, specifically as it relates to this system. And I'm guessing that when you get some of this information in this class, you may strengthen your idea of your guess of your personality type, or you may start to have some questions about the accuracy of it. And that's part of the fun of this system. It's very powerful and it's very dynamic in that way. Just to review, remember that our working definition of personality is a pattern of thought and emotion and behavior that varies among individuals but is stable over time. So we have a personality triad of thought, emotions, and behavior that is stable over time. And remember that stable does not mean static. We're going to expect some fluctuations because that's the nature of biology and apparently the nature of psychology. With that in mind, I'm going to give you a little information about the brain. There are 3 main distributed neurotransmitter pathways in the brain. Ooh-wee, what does that mean? Well, if you took a brain, any human brain, hopefully one not of a living person, and sliced it up and put some stain on it, very specific stain, you would notice 3 different patterns emerging, these different patterns. And each one of these pathways is related to a separate and single neurotransmitter, norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. And you may remember that the definition of a neurotransmitter is a chemical in the brain and body that passes messages from one nerve cell to another. And they're very important in terms of communicating to the whole body. Now, I want to make a point here that this is a distributed pathway, and distributed means that it begins in one part of the brain and distributes or arborizes, much like a tree. And I love this picture because at first glance it looks like a single tree, but you'll see that it's actually 3 separate trees starting in distinct places and then branching out and intermingling with each other. And in very much the same way, we believe that the neurotransmitter systems also interact and affect each other at the very edges of the system. Now, norepinephrine drives and regulates a system that's related to cognition or thinking. Norepinephrine is known as a brain adrenaline. Nor actually stands for neurons or the brain, and epinephrine is another word for adrenaline, so brain adrenaline. Serotonin is related to the emotional system and a sense of well-being. Also, it seems to be correlated with pain threshold. And if you look at this child's face, I think she has an overload of serotonin, sunny serotonin. And then lastly, dopamine seems to be correlated with behavior or behavioral activation. So it is a body energy, and also it deals with rewards and activation and making people want to achieve and go after a goal. Now, the question here is it possible that personality may be the result of the various combinations, high, medium, and low activity levels of the 3 main neurotransmitter pathways? If you think about biology in general, it's not that far of a stretch because that phenomena of high, medium, and low happens in almost every area of the body. You have large, small, and medium-sized people, dark-skinned, fair, medium-colored people. And my favorite example is that of blood pressure. We all have a certain range that we think we inherit, a certain range of a blood pressure, but under stressful conditions, the blood pressure temporarily rises, and if it's prolonged, you may live in a chronic state of hyper or high blood pressure. If, on the other hand, you take measures to relax, yoga, meditation, thinking ways that work in a better way for you, you may find that you can actually visit a lower blood pressure. And if you do that for a long period of time, then you may have chronic hypotension. If we take that step further and we then parse out the high, medium, and low combinations, all the possible combinations in this system, we end up with this gorgeous illustration that I like to call the periodic table of personality, or at least the proposed periodic table. And in here are all the different combinations, which actually come out to 27 specific types and 9 general types that we'll discuss. And the way that we get those 9 are by looking at these 2 inner rings. This is the norepinephrine ring and the serotonin ring. Another way of looking at that is this way. These are your 3 types that are very high in norepinephrine, that are low and mid-range, and then these are the various other combinations that you could have. Now this is where it really gets fun in my opinion. If you think of norepinephrine as the brain idle, these people would have a very fast brain idle. They would not only think quickly, but they would also speak quickly, and their brain would constantly be engaged in thought. These people often report that they have trouble turning their brain off. Unlike these people who don't second guess themselves, hit the pillow and they're out. They make very good gut responders, just make decisions and don't second guess themselves, as opposed to these people who seem to be intermittent thinkers. They think on and off, kind of in and out, conscious. And it's not that you don't always have thoughts happening, but we're talking more about problem solving. These people seem to be situation dependent, like kind of having random thoughts until you say, hey, what about this problem? And they turn it on. Hey, Jane, what do you think about this? And it turns on. And these people are in and out, in and out. Gets even more exciting when you go across the board this way. Let's say we'll just take these 3 thinking types and see how it plays out in combination. High fast brain idle, and you run average serotonin through it. What kind of personality type do you think you get? You get somebody who's constantly thinking, but very neutral affects. So they're always asking, what is that about? I wonder how that works. I wonder what happens when you put this together. In other words, you get our thinker type. Remember the nerd? Okay. Let's take this high brain idle and then put in low serotonin running through it all the time, a low sense of well-being. So then you're going to have the 6 type, the one saying to themselves, what else can go wrong? What's not right? Who can I trust? A big troubleshooter. In other words, you get our loyalist, the 6th. Likewise, if you have the high norepinephrine type and the high serotonin type, you get someone who's thinking, what else can go right? What else can go right? Or you get the crazy, wild and crazy enthusiast 7. And the 27 types are when you start to include dopamine. Your exercise now is to take your handout that I'm about to give you and figure out what role does dopamine have in this system, and how would you pinpoint yourself, given that we already have discussed the social orientation, the levels of health, and personality, where do you fit in? Each one of you try to help each other to figure out, if I existed in a 3-dimensional system of personality, where do I live? Then we'll figure out, where do you visit under stress and optimal conditions?